I have a phobia of dark water. If I can't see the bottom of a body of water, I hate going anywhere near it. Is this an irrational fear? I'm not entirely sure. But looking at the ocean in its seemingly endless depths, I can't help but feel a sense of dread. For who knows what lurks in the inky blackness of the sea? How can we claim to know what species exist in the ocean when we have barely scratched the surface of the abyss?
There have been reports of strange creatures in the area.
Witnesses say they couldn't believe what they were seeing.
What is that? Welcome, beloved fofers, doubters, naysayers, non-believers, and skeptics. Welcome to Paranormal Fable or Fact. I am Victor Trevino, joined by my co-host and beautiful wife, Tammy.
We are your humble guides to tales of alleged hoaxes, unbelievable stories, and the overall strange.
Sweet. Okay, because we have to mention the email. It'll be in the show notes. And it is pfableorfact@proton.me.
We also have a Facebook page,
Oh, yeah, the Facebook.
Paranormal Fable or Fact.
All right. As reference to the last show, the Halloween special, I did look up black and yellow butterflies.
Oh, you did?
Yes, with a V on them. I couldn't find one because my mom said that the V was black.
Yes.
I found several with a V that's yellow, but my mom's not colorblind.
No, she's not.
She said, now the weird thing that I didn't ask her, and I should have, is the butterfly had to have landed with its wings open. You can't see a V if it's flying. You know how butterflies fly. They flop around with their wings going all crazy. How could she see a V? So it had to have landed, so she got a good look at it.
Maybe.
She had to have. But even then, you know how they land and they kind of do that weird, slow... Weird, slow?
Weird, slow?
Real slow flap of their wings. You know how they slowly open them? Or they land and they have their wings either folded tight up,
right,
or they lower them down.
Yeah, spread them out.
Right. So that's the only way my mom could have saw the V. I didn't ask her about that, but I just thought it was interesting that I couldn't find this butterfly that my mom was describing. I wanted to also mention a story, because I mentioned that there were several stories that we forgot to cover, and there was one story I wanted to ask my mom about, but the last time I asked her, she couldn't remember. So I remember when we were younger, my mom told us a story that her great-grandmother told her, or her grandmother, so my great-grandmother told her. And that was, when she was a little girl, they would crawl up on their farmhouse roof, and they would look out across the cornfields, and there would be a huge bonfire out there. And they could see women dressed in black dancing around this fire, and they could hear them chanting in Spanish. And the reason they watched them, because they could see from the night sky other women landing, from the night sky. They would land next to the fire and start dancing with the other women. And then women from the fire would just fly up into the sky. Yeah, like Superman. They just fly.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And again, it goes, you could shake your head and say, that's nonsense. But flying humanoids are a thing. Look them up.
Yeah.
People see them to this day. So, is it so outlandish that my dad saw that lady on the broom and my great-grandmother saw these women flying like Superman? That's nuts, but that's what she saw when she was a little girl. And I remember my mom told me that story.
That's interesting.
And then another thing, this is just between me and you, baby. I looked at my notes from the Ratcatcher episode 2.
Yeah.
How we managed to do a semi-cohesive show off of the rat nest that was my notes when we first started the show. I have no idea how we did it, baby.
Well, it was our second show. We were just trying.
Right. We didn't have a template. Now I have a template to follow.
Yeah.
We've gotten so much better. But it's just so, it's like night and day from where we were then
Oh, yeah.
to where you see our show now.
Practice makes better, you know?
Right. That's basically what it was. And I just, and I really want to redo those older shows, particularly that one.
Okay, well, let's continue with our other shows first.
Of course. I just thought that was interesting because it's just so much different. Just so much different. It just trips me out. So let's go over the rules. Rule number 1. We will never purposefully mislead or report false information.
Rule number 2. We are not professional podcasters, broadcasters, or audio editors.
Did you see?
Yeah, I don't know what I said. Say that again.
That's fine. We'll leave it in.
Okay. And we're not professionals.
Yeah, you just said we're not professionals. Everyone is entitled to believe what they want and entitled to their own opinions. And I added in this next part, and it's going to be in there from now on. That includes us. We're entitled to our own opinions. If you don't agree with us, that's fine.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't have the same opinion. And also, after this is recorded and put on the platforms, when I go back to listen to it, sometimes I change my opinion.
Yeah, me too. True.
Rule number 4, we are offering information and insight as food for thought, not persuasion.
Exactly. Okay. So this show is about, it's called the Monsters of the Abyss 1. And it's because there's so many sea monsters that I didn't want to come up with clever names for each one, so they're just going to be Monsters of the Abyss.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And we'll go 2 and then 3 and then 4 whenever we're talking about cases like this. This particular one is about the Zuiyo Maru, which was a Japanese fishing boat. And in April of this is the gist. In April of 1977, a Japanese fishing vessel named the I got the pronunciation and now it's just completely...
Of course.
If you're Japanese, please don't stop listening to the show.
Yes.
We're not making fun of you. I'm just an idiot. The Zuiyo Maru was traveling off the coast of New Zealand when a large carcass became snared in its nets. The rotting remains, they weighed about 4,000 pounds.
Wow.
They hoisted them out of the ocean, and they couldn't believe what they had. So they started taking pictures, took samples of these, what they call horny fibers. I guess I looked it up. It's what sponges are made out of. It's tissue that's absorbent. It's able to absorb
like
water.
natural sponges from the sea.
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay.
That's what horny fibers are. And I tried to look up the scientific term because horny fiber sounds dumb, but that's what they're called. So anyway, a sample was preserved before it was cast back into the ocean because the captain didn't want to spoil the mackerel that they had already captured, because
so they put the carcass back in the sea.
Yeah, they dumped it because
okay.
they didn't want to spoil the fish that they had on board, the mackerel. Well,
Do you think that was like a superstition thing or just a common thing that fishers do?
business.
Fishers do?
Fishermen, yeah.
Yeah, do.
Well, you don't want nasty, rotting fluids off this corpse to get on your fish.
Well, that's true.
Particularly Japanese that like raw fish.
Yeah, that's true.
They got to have
That's
fresh
true.
fish.
Yeah.
A drawing of this carcass was drawn by a man named Michi Hiko Yano, who was a crew member with some biology training. He'd gone to school and he knew a little bit about marine biology. Plus, he was like a production manager on board. And he's the one that drew the sketches that you can find of it online today. Oh. Those are his drawings. And we'll just call him Yano from now on because Michi Hiko is kind of hard for me to pronounce, even though Japanese would just roll it right off their tongue.
I'm not going to be able to say it.
So his sketches basically depict like a plesiosaur type creature or something similar to a plesiosaur.
Yeah.
The Japanese government was very excited to have discovered what they thought at the time was an unknown species. But after a symposium was held, and I believe it was several countries, I think it was like the UK, France, America, and somebody else, maybe the Russians, I don't remember. But it was a symposium done on what had been caught in this net. And basically, right after the symposium, the Japanese government completely changed their stance and said most likely it was a basking shark. And that's pretty much the gist. So
Because of the other countries, what they had opinions of it?
Well, we're going to go into that.
Oh, okay.
So, right off the bat, baby, I have to say, this isn't really a red flag. We're going to cover it in Arguable Truth number 3, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But the Basking Shark explanation is a stretch. It really is. There's only 2 things that I could find that point to it possibly being a basking shark. That's it, just 2. Everything else is like, no, it wasn't. And I'm talking about every other case that they found a carcass of a basking shark. It just doesn't, it just doesn't add up. Yeah. So that's not really a red flag. That was more of an observation, but I have it in the red flags. The one thing that I did find right off the bat was that basking sharks, indeed, their habitat range is in the area where this carcass was found.
Okay.
And that's the first thing that I found that says, ding, 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 ding. Yes, it could have been a basking shark.
Okay.
That's the first one.
All right.
Because I thought, oh man, we're going to have a home run if we look and it's in these waters that basking sharks are not even anywhere near. You know what I mean?
Right.
That would be like home run
yeah.
out of the park. You know what I mean? So,
Big
but
disclaimer.
yes, but that wasn't the case, unfortunately. Or maybe it is fortunate. I don't know. Either way.
Yeah.
But they do roam in those waters. So the fact that they found the carcass there wasn't like odd or anything. If we're subscribing to the idea that it was a basking shark. The next red flag, all descriptions that you read, including the gist that I just read, every description that you're going to find on this carcass that was found by the Zuiyo Maru is going to say it was most likely, quote unquote, most likely a basking shark.
Every description?
Every single one.
Wow.
Wikipedia, documentaries,
Wow.
I looked at them all. The blogs, websites, everything. And Inarguable Truth number 7 is going to explain why. So I don't want to go too far into that. But that was just a red flag that I found. That was one of the reasons I wanted to do this show, is because of those descriptions. And then when I looked at the photos of it, I was like, wait a minute. I saw this story all the way back in the 80s. It was on It was on Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, is when I first saw it. And this was all the way back I was like a teenager, I think, when I saw it.
Okay.
So it fascinated me back then, just like it fascinates me now. What they pulled up and the photos that they have, I was just like, what? My first impression, it's a sea dragon. It's a sea dragon.
Yeah, it looks like a dragon.
And that's what you said when when I first showed you the
Right.
photos. You were like, oh man, that looks like a sea dragon. Yeah. I didn't think basking shark. I don't care how rotted it is. So that's why I wanted to do the show, is because when I recognized the photos, I immediately, all my excitement just went through the roof. And then when I started seeing these descriptions, most likely a basking shark, I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Gonna have to dig a little deeper, which I did. So, moving on to the next red flag.
Okay.
When the first review, and this is the symposium, when the first review of this incident was held, there was an obvious biased decision made by that symposium, by the people that were there. And other marine biologists and other people that were, that look into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Other scientists kind of criticized them because they're like, well, that's awful biased for you to do that. And the biased decision was purposefully and pointedly not only not inviting anybody from the crew on aboard the fishing vessel, but in particular not inviting Yano, who was the guy that took the tissue sample. He was on board when the corpse was found. He closely examined the corpse that was found. And remember, he has a little bit of biology in his training. He wasn't just some layman.
Right.
He's the one that did the drawing and the sketches of the carcass.
Yeah.
And they did not ask him to attend.
Suspicious.
Very biased.
Yeah. No, it sounds suspicious.
Exactly.
And yeah, very suspicious.
It would be like a murder case, and there's witnesses there that see the body, but due to Mother Nature, let's say the wind or a rogue wave washes the carcass off the ship.
Yeah.
And it's lost at sea.
Yeah.
And here come the police, and they don't want to talk to the witnesses that saw the corpse.
Right.
That's basically what you're doing here.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It's mind-blowing to me why they wouldn't want to hear from the guy that actually saw it.
Yeah.
They did hear from him, but after the symposium was already over, and basically after they had already made up their minds.
Why bother, though?
By that point, why bother? Because they had already determined that most likely it was a basking shark. He wasn't able to submit any papers, any drawings, anything that he had to defend his position, Yano.
Oh, so none of his drawings, none of his research, nothing was at the symposium?
No.
Wow.
Only the results from the tissue sample was there. They didn't hear from him. They didn't look at the sketches. They didn't look at any of his paperwork that he had.
That's like having a book signing and not having the author there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, we're having a book signing for this, but the author's not going to be
We're
here.
going to go deeper into it. I just realized it's
Okay.
in our Real Truth number 2, and I just saw that at the end. But
Okay.
So we shouldn't be going too deep into
Okay.
it. But anyway, so let's move on. Might have to edit all this out. But anyway,
It's okay.
another red flag that I found was that when they were hauling it out of the ocean, the bottom half of it fell away. So you're only looking at half the carcass.
So that big old 4,000 pounds was just half of it.
Just half of it, yes.
Wow.
The other half fell off. And the witnesses, I only found this on a few websites because I couldn't find any. I was looking for witnesses aboard the ship of that fishing vessel that had been interviewed separately from the incident. And I only found 1 or 2, and of course I didn't put them in my notes. Partially because I had to translate. It was in Japanese.
Yeah.
But from what I could gather, the witnesses said that the part of the body that fell away, there were flippers on the rear end of the body that matched the flippers that you see in the photos. Which is why when you look at Yano's sketch, it has 2 sets of flippers like a plesiosaur.
Oh, so he's kind of adding to what fell off.
Because they saw it, right? They saw the whole thing.
Right, okay.
And before they could haul the whole carcass on the ship, the bottom half of it fell away and was lost in the ocean. They're not going to turn that big old vessel around and try to dredge it back up again because, well, for one thing, their net was full of the front part of it. So,
Right.
But basically, that's what the eyewitnesses reported, that there were flippers on the rear of the body that were just as big as the ones on the front. And that's why he drew that drawing the way he did, because they saw it and said, oh,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Does that sound like a basking shark?
No.
Basking sharks don't have 2 sets of flippers.
No.
Which takes us to the next red flag, which is sharks are cartilaginous, which means they don't have bones. All of their bones are made out of cartilage.
Right.
So when they die, they tend to float because there's nothing weighing them down. Cartilage is really light,
Right.
you know. And all of the examples that were used to explain this case, what we're looking at in the photos, all of those basking shark carcasses, the rotting carcasses on, that they get determine how the body rots, they were all found on shore.
Oh, interesting.
Because they float and they tend to drift onto shore after a while. And that's how they know how basking sharks rot away. So that's the support from my earlier statement as it's a stretch to say that it was a basking shark, because this thing was dredged up by fishing nets that they had at a 900-foot depth.
Wow.
They were fishing for mackerel, so they had their nets really deep, basically almost on the bottom of the ocean, and that's how they captured this carcass.
Well, plus you said it was 4,000 pounds.
Well, basking sharks are massive.
Oh,
They can
okay.
get up to, of course, a rotting corpse, I don't know how much
Yeah.
that would weigh, but yeah, it was massive. Whatever they pulled up was massive. But basking sharks do get huge. I mean, they get up to like 38 feet long or something. I mean, they're monsters. They're like whale sharks, basically.
Oh, okay.
But thinner. Whale sharks look more like whales, and basking sharks look more like sharks. Whales, when they die, sink. I even looked up this study of this scientist. They were talking about how it's fascinating when they come across a whale carcass at the bottom of the ocean because it creates its own habitat. Because so many little wee beasties
Yeah.
will go over there to feed on,
Yeah,
what's
feed
the
off
remains.
it. Yeah.
And it'll start its whole little ecosystem on this whale carcass. So scientists are just fascinated to see what's there. And well, this thing sunk just like a whale carcass. Difference between a whale carcass and a shark carcass? Whales have bone.
Oh.
Whale carcasses sink. So this thing being at a depth of 900 foot does not sound like a cartilaginous creature, does it?
No.
Because all other basking shark corpses float and tend to wash up on shore. This one did not. Big red flag, right?
Yes.
So the other thing, moving on to the next red flag, we're just knocking it out of the park here, baby, that the captain on board, he was so stunned at what they were dragging out of the ocean, he stopped all operations. Just said, pulled the emergency stop. Everybody shut down what they were doing. And he actually paused the ship, anchored the ship in place, and called the shore to bring out reporters. I think there were reporters like on another ship that was like a few miles away or something, or a couple 100 miles away maybe. I don't know. But he called reporters, Reporters were flown out to his vessel by helicopter, and that's how we have the photos. Those photos you see of the carcass, those aren't like amateurs that, fishermen that were just,
Oh, okay.
Those were Japanese, I believe they were Japanese reporters that took those photos, and that's why we have those photos.
Oh.
Because remember, this was all the way back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And they're like glossy, colored photos,
Yeah, interesting.
But I thought that the reason this was a red flag to me is I thought it was fascinating that here you have this sea captain, you have this vessel full of seasoned fishermen. I'm sure they've seen carcasses out at sea before.
Oh, I'm sure.
Seen things dead floating around out there, whales and everything else. He took one look at this thing and said, oh no, we're calling somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to see this.
He wanted to alert somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
So that to me is a big red flag that might not have been a basking shark, because we're talking about a commercial fishing vessel. For him to just,
stop production is a big
full
thing.
on, right. So I thought, that's huge. It's a big red flag. Moving on. When this came out in 1977, the Japanese government was so excited, just like I said in the gist.
Right.
They were so excited about this that they actually put out a commemorative stamp.
Oh, nice.
That featured...
That's a big theme when governments do that. That's a big theme.
That featured a plesiosaur.
Yeah.
But then, less than a year later, basking shark. Nothing to see here, folks. Most likely a basking shark. Yeah. Wow. So I thought that was a huge red flag.
That's interesting.
That the Japanese government took such a stance at the beginning when they had their own people looking at this tissue sample and all of the evidence. They're like, oh man, it's a plesiosaur. But then when they have the symposium, all of a sudden, most likely just a basking shark. Nothing to see here, folks. I thought that was very interesting. Moving on to the next red flag.
Uh-huh.
Now, we're not marine biologists, baby.
No.
And nor am I a biologist. I'm not a scientist.
No.
I don't have a degree in anatomy or anything like that. In fact, there's a clean photo of the creature, of this carcass, I say creature, but carcass, from the back. You can clearly see the length of the spine where it goes over where the head is drooping. No dorsal fin. Now, one could argue, well, maybe it rotted away. But that's not what tends to happen because there's cartilage in the dorsal fin.
Right.
So it would look like what they say it would look like almost like a bone sticking out of the back with a bunch of stringy tissue hanging off of it.
Okay.
But there's no dorsal fin at all.
No.
And remember, what you're looking at from the back when you see that spine, it's supposed to be cartilage. Sharks don't have bone. They have a spine, but it's made out of cartilage.
Right.
So it looks like a spine. But again, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, you're not a pro.
I'm looking at it, and I'm like, also the pectoral fins on the front look way longer than you would see it on your standard basking shark. I mean, you can look at all kinds of photos and movies of basking sharks swimming around and stuff. Their pectoral fins are pretty long.
Yeah.
But not like this creature on the photo, baby. That thing is... The flipper seems like it's like almost half the length of the body.
Yeah, it looks like wings.
Like wings or something. Mm-hmm. Also, again, not a scientist, but to me, it looks like there's shoulders on this carcass, and what to me looks like shoulder muscles, where these pectoral fins should be, where they're saying it's a basking shark.
Oh, that's interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, you've seen the photo.
Yeah,
it looks like shoulders. First thing you said was, man, that looks like a sea dragon.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
With wings.
Yeah.
Or flippers or whatever. But it doesn't look like a rotting shark.
No.
Is the bottom line. So again, this goes again with that first red flag that I was talking about.
Right.
Where it's a stretch.
Yeah.
Just doesn't... It's not checking all the boxes when it comes to basking shark remains. So that pretty much does it.
On the red flags.
On the red flags. So now we're getting into the good stuff.
Yes.
Fasten your seatbelts, folks.
Here we go.
Fashion your seatbelts?
Fasten.
Fasten.
Inarguable truth number 1.
I could not find another case of a carcass being dredged up like in the case of the Zuiyo Maru.
Inarguable truth number 2.
None of those people gathered at the symposium to review this case were actually there.
Inarguable truth number 3.
Basking sharks are cartilaginous fish.
Inarguable truth number 4.
Worldwide, scientists have only explored about 20% of the ocean.
Inarguable truth number 5.
To make the argument for the basking shark explanation, one has to assume that the dorsal fin either rotted away or was displaced due to decay.
Inarguable truth number 6.
Basking sharks do not have nares towards the front of their heads.
Inarguable truth number 7.
Horny fibers are not found in sharks. Let's go back to inarguable truth number 1, and that inarguable truth number 7 is pretty much the mic drop, as it usually is. But going back to inarguable truth number 1, I could not find another case like this. Every time I found any kind of remains or carcasses, it was always what people had found on shore. Just like we were describing, the differences between whale carcasses and shark carcasses. Normal basking shark carcasses, which they used as an example, was always on shore.
May I ask a question?
Of course you can, baby.
Are you looking during this span from the 1970s, like that 50-year span, or are you going back?
I'm just
Did you go way back?
Google search.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
Strange creatures dredged up from the ocean, okay. Strange creatures sighted in the ocean, carcasses being found, strange carcasses that couldn't be identified, etc., etc.
So it could be any time.
Anytime.
Yeah.
All I could find, of course, cursory research. I'm not a professional researcher.
Exactly.
But all I could find was things that had washed up on shore, dating all the way back to the early 1900s. Like what they assumed was giant octopus and giant squids and everything else.
Correct.
Oh, the other one was the oarfish. That was a big one because oarfish can get massive, and people thought they were sea dragons.
Oh, okay.
But again, all of them were washed up on shore.
Right.
People were walking around them, taking pictures of them on the sand. People saw them. Nothing I could find was dredged up from the bottom of the ocean,
interesting.
as in this case.
Yeah.
And I think that is profound.
Yes, it is.
Because we already talked about it. Shark bodies float. They wash up on shore.
Right.
They don't sink to the bottom like a whale carcass. Had they said this was a whale carcass, we wouldn't be doing this show.
Right, correct.
Because it there's too many things that match.
Right.
But if you're going to say it's a basking shark, and all the characteristics point to it having bone, it cannot be a basking shark. And that's why this inarguable truth is so important.
Yeah.
And it's inarguable. I mean, if there might be something out there, and if somebody finds something, I'd be fascinated to see it.
Me too.
Because we do a show.
We would.
we could do a show on it.
Yes.
But I couldn't find anything. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. Yeah. I think that's pretty much enough for that.
Yeah.
Inarguable truth is not really much to talk about because we pretty much covered it already.
Yeah.
So, inarguable truth number 2, and again, we already kind of covered this one and kind of went into detail on this one more than we should have.
Right.
But none of the people that were at the symposium to review this case were actually there. And I mean on the fishing vessel. None of them were there. None of them saw what these fishermen saw. None of them saw what the fishing captain saw. And none of them saw what the reporters saw and photographed.
That's so suspect.
It's second. Well, I mean, that happens often. But what I'm saying is, wouldn't you want to try to hear from the horse's mouth?
Yes, of course you would.
And they didn't do it.
Of course you would.
They received it secondhand. And then I already made the point with the, it's like doing an investigation with no corpse.
Right. Well, and it's like if somebody tells a story, like if I tell, like our Halloween special, if we told your parents stories, if we did that, we probably wouldn't be able to include as much detail as your parents did. You know what I mean? So it's a secondhand sound. So it's not legit. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're saying it's secondhand stories are always different from firsthand.
They're not telling the whole, because they weren't there.
Right.
You're not there.
Right. So what exactly are you arguing?
Yeah.
If you're just getting the minimum amount of information and, that's it, put a stamp on it. But that is debunking 101, baby.
And the symposium, when they did the symposium, that's when they believed that they had an unidentified creature, right? That's why they created the symposium?
That's why they formed the symposium, was because the Japanese government believed that they had discovered an unknown creature.
Okay, and then all these other countries come in.
And all of a sudden.
Yeah, because they are there.
Yeah.
They are there. They are there. And they stopped it. Yeah.
Yes, they.
Yeah, I
with
got
a capital
it.
T.
Okay, I got it. I know where we're going on this now.
So moving on to inarguable truth number 3, and this is a huge one, and we had kind of already covered this.
Yeah.
Basking sharks are cartilaginous fish. The carcass that was examined again by this Yano guy, he reported that it was bone, not cartilage. He's a fisherman. They gut and clean fish all the time. He sees fish bone. He sees cartilage. They probably catch sharks. They eat shark fin soup in Japan.
Right.
He knows what cartilage looks like.
Right.
I would think it's safe to assume
Yes.
that he knows what the difference between cartilage and bone. He said it was bone.
Yeah.
And not only did he say that what he was looking at on this carcass was bone, he said that there was red muscular tissue on the corpse. Sharks don't have red muscular tissue.
Isn't that more of a mammal thing?
Or an oxygen breather.
Ah.
You know what I mean? Animals, I think that's what, because of the blood cells, I think that's
Yeah.
what makes the tissue red.
That's interesting.
It's warm-blooded or something. I
Yeah.
can't remember. But basically, sharks don't have that tissue. And as a matter of fact, when you look at the photos, particularly the colored ones, you can actually see there is reddish tint to some of the tissue.
That's so interesting.
So how could it be a basking shark when basking sharks don't have
Right.
red tinged tissue?
Right.
Just asking.
Yep.
So, and again, what supports the idea that what Yano reported and what he saw was correct is that the corpse sunk,
Yes.
just like whale corpses do,
Right.
because of the bone. Now, don't get me wrong. When whales first die, they float,
Right.
and they can float for days
Yeah.
because of all the fat.
Right.
It's buoyant. Predators come and eat away the blubber. And
Right.
then after most of the blubber's gone, then the
Then it
carcass will
sinks.
sink. And I think it takes like months for it to
Oh, wow.
completely be reduced to bone because whales are massive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, this thing sunk just like a whale does.
And with the pictures, it didn't look like it would have so much like blubber or body mass. You know what I mean? To me, it didn't.
I don't know, but the main suspicion of why it was a basking shark is because of the way the tissue is hanging, because they say that's the way basking sharks rot. But again, they only know that because they were observing basking sharks on shore that had washed up. Never a basking shark that was found 900 feet down and pulled up like it was
Yeah.
and had these massive flippers,
Yeah.
no dorsal fin. Well, we'll go into that in the rest of
Yeah.
the inarguable truths. But that's a huge one. That
Yeah.
this thing, everything Yano said is supported by how the corpse behaved while it was decaying. So, inarguable truth number 4. Worldwide, scientists have only explored about 20% of the ocean. That's not just scientists, that's just overall. We estimate that we've only explored about 20% of the ocean. So the idea that we know what's out there, that we know and they discover new species like nearly on a daily basis.
I've said this before in previous shows. That just shows arrogance to whoever they are, because you cannot tell me that we have discovered everything that flies, everything that swims, and everything that crawls on this earth.
Absolutely.
We can't be arrogant and think that. And I'm sorry, but that ocean is a big ocean. The oceans are huge. And we just have not discovered everything. We just haven't.
70% of the surface of this planet is water. 70%.
Right.
And in places, it's miles deep.
Yes.
We have no idea what's out there.
Yes.
In fact, I remember there was an argument that I think someone put out the claim that we know more about the surface of the moon than we do the ocean.
That's an interesting quote. That's an interesting quote.
And it's an inarguable truth. We haven't discovered everything in the ocean.
No.
And again, they discover new species. I mean, remember the colossal squid? It doesn't exist. Those are old fisherman tales. Giant squid don't exist. We're scientists. We know everything.
Yeah.
Until they started capturing them.
Yeah.
They have, I think it's either in Norway or Sweden, maybe Denmark. One of those countries. They have like a 38-foot specimen of a colossal squid. And I think I saw that on Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World as well.
Yeah.
And it's a juvenile.
Oh, dang.
The sex organs aren't fully developed
That's crazy.
in this carcass that they have. And it's 38 feet.
I'm telling you, we
We have
cannot
no
be
idea.
arrogant
Right. We have no idea.
to say that we know every creature.
So moving on to inarguable truth. Moving on to inarguable truth number 5, which is to make the argument for the basking shark explanation, one has to assume the dorsal fin either rotted away or was displaced due to this decay.
Right.
You have to assume it because, again, there's no dorsal fin. And I've read everywhere where the crew says, no, there was no dorsal fin. The website or the blog would say, well, they say there wasn't, but there is one present. No. Show me the photo where you're seeing this dorsal fin. I've seen all the photos. There's no dorsal fin. And where the dorsal fin should be, according to their own charts, their own drawings of how basking sharks rot away, it should be just directly behind the pectoral fins, which is clearly on the photo.
Yeah.
No dorsal fin. There's nothing there. There's nothing even that looks like remnants of what would be a dorsal fin.
Yeah.
So, plus you look at the sketch of the eyewitness that was there, no dorsal fin on the sketch.
Yeah. And they're seasoned fishermen, and they've seen a lot of fish, but the captain immediately stopped everything and called the press to get pictures. So they didn't even know what they were looking at.
Nope.
So it's just amazing that people are like, oh no, it's this. And you think seasoned fishermen, why would the captain contact the press? Why? Because he would know that was a basking shark.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Or something similar.
Yes, of
He
course.
he would know what it was.
Of course.
They had no idea.
No.
And the thing is during that showing of Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, they had this scientist, very pompous man. He's over there. Well, when you have a basking shark, it tends to rot away. And he's drawing all these little lines on this basking shark illustration. And he's showing you how it rots away. And he says the fins tend to fray. And he draws these little squiggly lines.
The fraying of the fins during decay was used to explain some witnesses' descriptions of hair on carcasses that had washed ashore.
And he shows how it would, because the bottom part of the shark rots away first, you have what looks like a long neck and a small head, right?
Right.
And that's the explanation. But that's where I say, you're messing up. Because he claims the fins fray, but they're still present. At that point of decay, on severe decay, before the cartilage disappears, the fins fray. So we should clearly see a frayed dorsal fin.
We should.
No dorsal fin. Not on the photos. Not the eyewitnesses said no. So what are they talking about?
Interesting.
So I think we about covered that one.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
move on to an inarguable truth number 6, which is basking sharks do not have nares or nostrils towards the front of their head. Yanu said that this carcass had nostril-like features towards, in fact, you can see them in the photos, it had nostrils towards the front of the head. Basking sharks don't have nostrils toward the front of the head. In fact, no shark has nostrils toward the front of the head.
No, they don't.
And I believe the nares on sharks they're like holes, and they're part of the sensory system that sharks use to like detect blood and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I don't even think basking sharks have those at all because they don't detect blood. They don't feed on blood, so they don't have those sensors that other sharks have.
Okay.
Because they're krill feeders. They're basking feeders.
Yeah.
So according to Yano's report, and this is what he wrote, from what remained on the cranium, the nares were near the top/front and clearly visible to the reporters that were flown in to view the carcass. I wrote scientists there. It should have been reporters because I thought it was scientists that they flew out, but no, it was reporters. I'll just take all that out. Anyway, So basically what they're saying is that not only did he see him,
But so did the reporters.
the crew saw him,
yeah, other
the
people
reporter
saw
saw him, and
There's
the captain saw him,
numerous witnesses.
that say that it had nostril-like features toward the front of what remained of the cranium, of what remained of this. And again, cranium is a skull.
Yes.
Basking sharks don't have skulls. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, what are we talking about?
And again, if you look at the photos, it looks like it has a skull, and it looks like it has some kind of nostrils, just like what he described. So if basking sharks don't have that, what are we talking about? I ask. Just asking. Not making any points, not
Yeah.
trying to argue any points, not trying to convince anybody.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Right.
How could it be a basking shark when basking sharks don't have nostrils?
Correct.
Moving on to inarguable truth number 7. Here we are, baby.
Yep, we're at the end.
We're approaching the finish line.
Yes, we are.
And this is the mic drop. Inarguable truth number 7. Horny fibers are not found in sharks. And again, I hate that term,
Yeah.
horny
Yeah.
fibers. But this is the mic drop, because this is why everywhere you look, it's going to say most likely a basking shark, because it could not have been. The tissue samples taken by Yanu contained horny fibers. Sharks don't have horny fibers. So although there were parts of the tissue that matched a basking shark's, or whatever, a fish or whatever, I think they called them elastoids, that matched a known basking shark species, the presence of the horny fibers that were found throughout the tissue sample did not. So what are we talking about?
Oh, what are we looking at?
It couldn't have been a basking shark. So why are they still saying, well, it most likely was a basking
That's
shark?
why they're saying most likely.
They cannot determine what
No,
it was.
they can't. They don't know.
But you have to ask yourself, why not just come out and say, well,
We don't know.
we don't know.
Because they are smart. They are supreme. They know more.
Yes, but why would they care about some body dug up in the ocean? So we have to put on our tinfoil hats.
Oh, here we go.
Well, why would they want to hide something that was dredged up, baby? If it was an unknown species, why wouldn't they be excited about it?
Because maybe we've already discovered this creature.
Well, maybe
And we're not allowed to
Maybe
know
we
about
shouldn't be talking about this, because we're not to the conclusions yet.
Okay.
But the initial testing and every test that has been done since has found horny fibers in the tissue sample that was submitted by Yanu.
Wow, that's interesting.
So it could not be a basking shark. Period. Mic drop. That's it.
Boom.
And that's why you're going to see everywhere. You can go on right now and look. I welcome anybody to look online and look up the Zuiyo Maru Carcass incident or encounter or whatever. You're going to see that most likely it was a basking shark. That's how they explain it away. That's the debunking.
Yeah.
Most likely it was a basking shark.
Yeah.
Do your research by proclamation.
Would
Rule
you call
number
it
4.
an encounter or incident?
Well, I don't know. Just say
interesting.
that incident, maybe. I don't know.
No, I'd say encounter.
I just
Encounter sounds
I just
Swedish.
wish that it wasn't a fishing vessel, but I don't know what other vessel would have its nets in the water. But apparently that's how scientists do their studies now. They drag nets through the water.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently. And partially because of what happened with this Zuiyo Maru. So they might have dredged something up.
Wait. You said partially because of this incident?
Possibly. I'm not saying definitely, but possibly. But I have seen
Interesting.
other oceanographic studies by marine biologists, and that's what they do. They dredge these nets to pull up stuff to, look at the species and see if they can discover anything new. That's part of what they do.
That's interesting.
You have to ask yourself why. So and it's totally possible, baby, that maybe they have pulled up something in nets. We
Of
just
course.
don't hear about it.
Of course
They just
we
don't report it. And they're not going to call in reporters by helicopter and have photographs taken.
No.
So they just quietly dump it back in the ocean. Well, we didn't see none of that. We don't know what that is. So who knows, baby? Who knows? And do you need to wear a tinfoil hat to suspect that that's what's going on?
No.
Because I find it hard to believe that since 1977, nothing else has been dredged up.
Yeah.
I find that highly
I
suspect.
agree with that. That's
Just
very
out of the
suspect.
blue. Here it is.
That's the key word there. Suspect.
Yeah, and we never have seen anything anywhere near it. I find that very, very suspicious. Very, very suspicious. So, in conclusion, baby, what do you think this carcass was?
I think it's like I said before, a water dragon, some kind of. It's a species that we have not discovered, or that they have discovered. They're just not telling us right now.
Wow.
And this world that we live on is fascinating because we have creatures that resemble something else. Like, I'm going to use the seahorse.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever looked at seahorses? They are fascinating. And all the different types.
Mm-hmm.
There's ones that look like a branch. There's ones that look like an actual horse.
Yeah, aren't they called sea
They
dragons?
are, yes, they are a trip. So
Yeah, they look
who's
like
to
kelp.
say it's not a giant seahorse? I'm telling you, it's a creature that we don't know about. And they don't want us to.
See, I have another theory.
Okay, tell me yours.
And mine's pretty out. You gotta be... you gotta dig deep, man.
Okay, we're digging deep.
You gotta
everybody.
flatten your slate
Okay.
and just really look at this objectively. Because when you ask yourself, why not just come out and say, we have no idea what it was? Is it just arrogance? Really? I mean, it could be, because there are some arrogant
I think it is.
jerk-offs that are in the academia. Like I said before, I think it's just a small number of them at the top
Oh, yeah.
that pretty much make all these idiotic.
Oh, yeah. Because
dismissive.
that's just like every occupation. There's always the bad ones that make everybody else look bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think it is. And most of the other scientists are just like, they don't agree or whatever, but they say, oh, it's a consensus and this is what we found.
Yeah.
And they pretty much speak for the whole academic community.
Yeah.
Academic community. So I'm not attacking, and I know it sounds like I attack scientists, but I'm not. I'm attacking those few, the jerks,
Yeah.
the jackasses, the ones that are ignoring evidence.
Okay, but what is your...
That irritates me. I don't think it's arrogance. Because why not just come out and say, hey, we don't know what it was?
Okay, but what do you think it is?
You have to clean the slate.
I'm cleaning the slate.
I believe it was probably some type of scientific experiment
Oh.
conducted by a government.
Look at you.
Maybe a created creature, a mutation of some type. They lost track of it. Here comes these Japanese fishermen, scoop it up in their nets.
Oh my gosh, you just
So
blew my mind.
The symposium is held. They go, hey, listen here, Japan, we can't have you saying that this was a plesiosaur. Yeah, it's top secret, doing military studies.
Oh, Victor he just
You know
hit
what
a
I'm saying?
grand slam.
So then all the other governments are like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, that's it. Most likely it was a basking shark, and that's it. It was buried.
Wow.
Because you have to ask yourself, there has to be something like that. I mean, and I know that's fantastic and way out there in left field.
I love your conclusion.
But how else can you explain it, baby? Arrogance? I don't think so.
Wow. You just blew me away. Wow.
Can you see what I'm saying,
Oh,
though?
100%.
Because it makes sense. That's really, to me, the only thing that makes sense.
That's a great conclusion.
Because all of a sudden the Japanese government's like, yeah, look what we discovered. They're all happy. They're all proud. They're putting it on their stamps. They're hailing these fishermen as heroes.
Yeah.
Flags are going up. There's confetti
And
flying
other countries
down.
come in and go, hey, Japan, sit down.
And they're like, Japan, come to the symposium, but leave your witnesses behind. We don't want them here. And Japan was like, what? You don't want the guys that were there on the ship to come? No, we want you to come. Okay. Japan goes there, and they're like, now listen. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I do.
It makes sense to me.
I do.
That's the only thing that makes sense. And that's why it disappeared. That whatever this thing was.
they let
And
it
that's
go
why
and- yeah.
since 1977 we haven't heard anything
Mum's
else of
the word.
anything else being dredged
Yeah.
up by fishing boats.
Yeah.
Because you know it happens.
Oh, yeah.
You know it happened. They've
Has
probably dug up brought
Oh,
up,
yeah.
I say dug up, dredged up all kinds of crap from the bottom of the ocean. All kinds of stuff. So that's my conclusion.
Wow. Very impressive, Mr. Trevino. Very impressive. I love it.
Thank you.
I'm usually pretty proud of my conclusions, but I'm really just, wow, you just put me to shame.
It's just something that I started really thinking about. I'm like that.
Yeah.
Because it's easy, especially, you know me and my opinion on academia, it's easy to think, oh, they're just being arrogant.
Yeah,
We
that's
know exactly
where
what it
I
was.
was going.
We can't prove it conclusively that it was a basking shark, but most likely it was just a basking shark.
You know, arrogance. But
Yeah.
it's too much.
It's like the Wizard of Oz theory. They want us to look over here while they're doing stuff over
right.
there.
It's too much, baby. I
Wow,
mean, the
that's
government
interesting.
clearly looked at the tissue.
Yeah.
The scientists that work for the Japanese government clearly had findings of this is an unknown species.
Mm-hmm.
In order for the Japanese government to get excited and to put out a commemorative stamp.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And for that to just turn a 180, just
Yeah.
like that, it has to be
Bet you
something.
can't find those stamps.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know. I've seen pictures of them online. You can find pictures of them online.
How interesting.
So, what happened?
Yeah.
If my conclusion is wrong, what happened?
Yep.
And don't tell me it was a basket shark. I'll slap you. It wasn't a basket shark. It couldn't have been. Because again, only those two things that it being a basking shark matched. The fact that basking sharks are found in those areas of the
Right.
ocean.
Right.
And that, what was the other? Oh, that the elastoids in the tissue did match a known basking shark species. Those are the only two things. Everything else, including the other parts of the tissue sample, point to it not being a basking shark. So, conclusion, wasn't a basking shark.
Yeah.
Don't know what it was. Have no idea what it was. It was something that looked like a plesiosaur because, again, the eyewitnesses said that it had a second set of flippers. So, who knows what it was?
Yep.
That about does it, baby.
It sure does. This was a good show. Good show. I liked it.
I was been fascinated by this, like I said, since the 80s, baby. But anyway, thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. And if you could give us a review online, please do it because it'll move us up the ranks. It'll move us through the algorithms. And when people go to search for our show, it'll pop up quicker
Yes.
if we get those reviews. Even if it's just a thumbs up. You know, you don't have to write a whole paragraph on the reviews. Just give us a thumbs up and say, great show, love this show, whatever, you know, hate them, they suck, whatever. Reviews. We need them.
Yes.
And also, if you want to send in your stories, because inevitably we're going to do another Storytime show, we would love to hear from the listeners, especially like local folklore or stories from like first responders and stuff like that. Oh man, those
Yes.
stories fascinate me.
Yes. Truckers.
If you're truckers, yeah.
Truckers have good stories too.
If your stories are too long to type out in an email, again, on your phone, get a free app, digital recorder, record your voice on your phone, and just email it to us digitally.
Yes.
And we'll either play it right on the show, or if you want to be, remain anonymous, we'll just tell your stories in our own words.
Share the podcast. Share the Facebook page. And as always, thank you for listening. Good night.